So I'm going to be going over some basics of drawing faces and then using our knowledge of drawing faces to draw facial expressions that emote. What this template is that I'm tracing over, it's pretty similar to like a graph paper, except this pattern is called Fruit of Life or Seed of Life. But it just helps me kind of gauge proportions. And I'm sure that you've all seen this pattern in a multitude of places, especially now that sacred geometry is becoming a rather more common topic of conversation. So I'm using the patterns underneath to just kind of guide me, and I'll just put basic shapes. So you'll be seeing ovals, triangles, and lines pretty much. That's the basics of how I draw faces. And when I say basic, I will kind of go over how to exaggerate, like, this is a very blank face. At this point, it's androgynous. I could make it more masculine. I could make it more feminine. But this is just kind of my go-to. Usually a thing that I like to talk about, because I still forget to do it a lot, but a lot of faces can kind of look flat or two-dimensional if you don't recognize the different planes of the face. And what I mean by that is, I'll do a quick scribble of a profile, but essentially, this isn't one big semicircle. It's not, you're not having like a balloon on your head. There's a flatter start to your forehead, and then it dips in and nose comes out. And then your cheek comes out further than your forehead. So there's a plane to be seen. And so if you recognize the different levels in different planes and different angles, your figures will become more believable. And nose is a little weird, but whatever. So if we bring that back to this, you have this flatter area that I mentioned, and the cheek comes out further than the forehead, so we can kind of identify where that plane would be. There's even hints of that in the Fruit of Life pattern. So right now I'm just highlighting like the structure of the planes, and again, this will always change. We're going to talk about different shapes and how to add traits in a way that you would like to build the subject of your choosing. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of that for now. And build a basic template of a face in pen, and we're gonna draw a few different faces. So I like starting with the nose. It's usually a circle and a triangle. And again, I'm going to be doing a blank one for now, and we can build different features later. So the eye is roughly right here. And then once I have that basic structure, I'm going to put a piece of paper over it, and we can kind of talk about proportions for a moment. Sorry, I sigh a lot when I draw. It's just a thing. I don't know why. So we have our little template, and I might actually use a thicker piece. Let's see. Nope, too thick. So I'm going to just build upon this template. And let's say I'm drawing a figure that needs to have the very typical masculine traits. So when we think of things that come across as masculine, we rely a lot on lines, angles, like sharp, boxy angles. So I have this kind of blank template underneath, and I'm going to build upon it so I can go in a more specific face. I'm going to go for a more masculine look in this, and so in order to make things masculine, I mentioned this in the human figure video, but you're going to amplify angles and lines, a lot of boxes and triangles, and if you're looking to make something look feminine, then you're going to make things with more curves. So to make this a more masculine figure, I'm going to start with the brow. Generally, pretty much triangles and rectangles. Might be a furrow, depending on how calm this person might be. Even the eyes are going to be more like boxes. Nose. Nostrils, also boxes. This is going to be kind of an intense dude, but that's mostly just to exaggerate, to show. Cheek, triangle. Jaw, triangle. Square chin. Even the lips, some people wonder, like, if I draw lips on a dude, he suddenly looks like he's wearing lipstick. And one way to avoid that is I generally draw whatever expression. Let's say this dude's upset about something. So he's going to curl his lip up a little bit. And this one can curl down because he's mad. And then I'm going to pull this away from the template so you can see. Instead of highlighting an upper lip, I do the expression and then the shadow that the lower lip causes. So I won't mirror it because I just kind of wanted to example. But another tip that I can share with you is some measurements. So if you look across, like go eye to eye, like this is where the other people would be. Bottom of the nose. I generally can rely that the ear is going to be somewhere around here. Right now, this is just the face. Realistically, the head, a lot of people are like, this is the head! And it's like, no, you still have some skull and some hair and some other junk to deal with. We will just give him a swim cap for now, because it looks beautiful. Alright, so hypermasculine figure with very sharp angles and planes. Got that measurement with the ear. Even if you just kind of mess around and scribble over your own drawings, you can find a lot of really interesting angles that help. So right now where this brow meets and follows the shape of the nose, also leads right to the corner of the jawbone. And I didn't plan, it's just like kind of where it worked out, probably from practice. And you can find your way to kind of play with styles you like. So I'm going to do the same thing and make this one primarily feminine. One thing I do like starting with the nose, so I usually do circle with a little triangle in it, and then a curve. I might go back in and define the nose more, but generally, throughout most of art history, women are portrayed with like a tiny little like, hey, I have breathing holes, and it's a little less ubiquitous, but it's definitely still a thing. If you had these characteristics, you could play with different eye styles and hairstyles as long as you had the basic form. And of course, you can still be any shape and size whatsoever. So, round cheekbone, round jaw, round chin, round nose, round brow, round head. And again, this is just an exaggeration so that we can show this. This is not how to draw a lady. It's just how how different angles and shapes can impact your figures. So I pull that away. Go close to the camera, sorry. And I'm gonna go a little bit bigger because she has a head. We'll give her a part up here, again with curls, curves, curls, curves. And again, use that for the ear. Same thing. You can kind of find connections in the face that help plan where you like having your features. So I am using another template that I drew. So this is a 3/4 angle. And you can see already a little bit of these guides making their way in. There's just, it flows with the dimensions of the pattern behind it. And so I drew the face to be pretty minimal so that we could mess with exaggerating expressions. So it's a blank female face. And so let's start with angry. When we're angry, our brows push down. And again, I'm going to be exaggerating these features quite a bit so that the point comes across well, hopefully. And we might have a little bit of a furrow. Another thing that happens with our eyes. So people have mentioned or complimented, people have said nice things that I draw emotion well. And a big part of that is just noticing how expressions change more minute details. It's not just like a, oh man, now I know I'm sad. It's, you have muscles in your face and they move regardless of whether you want them to or not. If you're sobbing, your other facial features are going to be showing it, not just your frown. So when you're angry, your lower lid pushes up and your upper lid pushes down. And it kind of creates this triangle. You'll see this shape a lot. Your lashes can often be used to mimic and push down, so it kind of matches the brow pushing down. And it looks kind of like a comic book, like this shape you'll see in a lot of comic book figures. We can give her a pupil if you want. Let's say she's just over whatever is happening. So you got the furrowed brow, the triangular kind of eye. And another thing that happens is the cheek being pushed up. And when the cheek gets pushed up, you do get this little nose line, but also the skin, if it's being pushed up, there's going to be a bit of a wrinkle right here. It can be subtle. It doesn't have to be a giant line. It can be a little dot just to suggest that there's movement in the face. Again, using the lashes to mimic this shape. cheek being pushed up. When we're angry, if it's subtle, you can do a lot with being subtle. You don't have to be screaming to convey that you're mad. And a subtle way is a curve up of the lip and then bring it down just a tiny bit lower than it would be if it was just resting. And then all it is you're pushing the corner of your lip down whether you want to or not. And that brings this down. And you just automatically look a lot angrier. You put some shadow to show you're pouting. Just over it. Just sick of it. And again, I'm just going to kind of play with the angles that are here. So if we look, just so happens that I draw the lid and the parallel of the cheekbone goes to the center of the lips. It's more or less parallel with the chin, with a little bit of flesh. And once you get comfortable with how you kind of shape these figures, you'll have a more consistent outcome. Instead of having trouble drawing the same figures over and over, you'll just have a kind of glossary of how to build your kind of figure. And let's go for sad. When we're sad, unlike the anger, it points up at the end. And again, this can be subtle. It doesn't have to be a massive, I'm so sad. The more subtle you can, the more you can say with small motions and small accents. It's pretty powerful once you kind of get the hang of it. And again, that lid shape is going to mimic that upturn. And our cheek is still being pushed up, just like in the anger that I just did, but it's going to be pushed up. So while the angry one was pushed down, we have this triangle ending pushed up. And a little line to emphasize that the cheek is being moved, the lid is being moved. We'll have her looking up because she's confused and sad. Sorry. You might see the little frown lines on the nose again. For this, I'm going to make it really subtle. It's going to be more like the Lichtenstein pop art girl where she's crying pretty. So we've got this curvy cheek. We've got this curvy chin and curvy jaw, curvy forehead. You don't really need to do this at all. I'm just kind of pointing out planes and how I see things. And so I'm going to do the same thing I did with the angry one. Lift it up a little bit and bring it down. And this shadow can be pointing down as well, just to kind of emphasize it. Instead, where I was curving up with the last one. And sometimes when you frown, you have again, those little lines underneath. Let's try being happy. Good luck. So let's start with the mouth this time. Again, you can keep that same base shape and just bring the corners up. You can, if you're laughing pretty hard, have that wrinkle line, but I'm going to skip that. This means if the cheek is being pushed up, it's dimples. If the cheek is being pushed up, then we have this. But a happy lid is open. Or just more open than when it's angry or sad. Oh, terrible eyeball. The eyebrow is also lifted up and kind of just curved. You might get a line up here from how happy you are. You're lifting your forehead. Still use lashes to be parallel. So I'm going to mix some more angular expressions and more angular features with softer ones because that's kind of the spectrum of what makes faces unique. So let's give this person a dramatic high brow. They're a little bit wide set apart. And that's fine. We're going to give sharp cheekbones and a sharp jaw, but big, curvy lips. And a curvy but straight nose. And a curvy but straight chin. We'll say, I'm going to go with the brown, give it a bit of a sass, and still allow, this is a bit wider than what I might typically draw, but I want to experiment with features. Push that cheek up. A little bit of a smirk. Some shadow. And we could amplify this to be more of a typically masculine figure, or we can amplify it to be more feminine. But the point is, experiment with different proportions and different shapes. Let's try a different angle. And I'm going to be mixing masculine with feminine features, and this will be the profile, so sideways. And I like to define the forehead and the shape of the nose first. So we'll give this kind of a curvy nose. And having the brow bone kind of helps me point out where the eye might be. We'll just have it kind of pointing down. Not necessarily sad, but not super stoked either. Kind of flat, not much happening with the brow, a curve but sharp angles. And at this point, the goal is that if I just blend different angles and features, I can get features and figures that can be androgynous, they can be masculine, they can be feminine, or I can amplify any of them in order to find what I need. So I would say mess with different shapes of the eyelid, mess with how things shape the mouth, mess with different shapes and proportions, and yeah, try to mess with this pattern and see if it helps you. That's all for now.